By devoting just 6 minutes each weekday for 1 year, you can read through the entire New Testament using David Servant's daily devotional, Heavenward Daily. Order your copy at heavenward.tv.
Well, welcome to Heavenward 7. This is the beginning of a great journey, and I'm so glad that we're going to be together on this journey. This is a journey that I've been dreaming about for a long, long time. If you're familiar with the ministry of Heaven's Family at all, you know that I'm a teacher. I love to teach the Word of God. And you probably have seen some of our video teaching that we recorded in Israel. We taught on the parables, through the Sermon on the Mount in Israel. Had a lovely time there. We recorded some of those teachings in very remote places in Alaska and in the Yukon, in Canada, and in South Dakota. Lovely, lovely scenic places. But the last time we tried that, actually about 2 years ago, we just ran into a multitude of problems. We can't control the weather. We can't control the mosquitoes. We can't control the lighting very well. And we just were, bucking our heads up against brick walls all over the Yukon and just came back disappointed. But we came back determined that we're going to do it like most everyone else does it, and that is get ourselves a studio. Much too expensive to rent one and pay for it, so we put one together in our own little offices here, and I think we've got a great start. And we're going to be able, because of this studio, to provide consistent teaching, week by week, month by month, year by year, and the sky is the limit as to how much God can bless the teaching of His Word. All right, so this is the first one. So happy that you've joined me, and we're going to be spending, if you're with me on Heavenward 7, just about 7 minutes a day together, working our way through the entire New Testament. So you can take them as you want. You could do them 5 times a week. You could do them 6 times a week or whatever, 7 times a week even. But 7 minutes a day, we together are going to get through the entire New Testament. All right, now let me tell you a little bit more of the background of why we're doing this. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book. It took me a year to write it. We called it Heavenward Daily. And the idea was, again, to help people get through the entire New Testament in 1 year's time. There's 260 chapters. Isn't that interesting? In the New Testament. And if you read 1 chapter a day, 5 days a week, you'll get through the New Testament in exactly 1 year. Every day, chapters are shorter or longer, but on average, you'll only have to read about 700 words. And so, the average person can read 700 words in about 3 minutes. So I determined I was going to write a devotional, a daily commentary on each chapter that would be read, and that I'd write no more than 700 words. All right, well, that was great. This book, has been a blessing to lots of people and so forth, but there was one thing that I wasn't happy about, and here's what it was. Because I was limited to 700 words, I could only say so much on a given day. And there were some days when I'd just go, oh, look at all the good things in this chapter we've read today that I'd love to teach about, that I'd love to share. But, had to stop at 700 words. All right, so the answer to that is Heavenward 7, our 7-minute daily video broadcast that we can just take our time. Take our good old time. We don't have to get through 1 chapter every 7 minutes. No, there's no way we're going to do that. And however long it takes, we're just going to enjoy the spiritual journey through the New Testament. So, very excited, and I hope this is the beginning of a wonderful relationship between me and you just about every single day as we spend 7 minutes getting a spiritual injection from the New Testament. All right, now let me tell you one other thing. As we study the New Testament, you might think we're just going to read it from cover to cover. Well, that's how most people read it. But I found what I think is a better way to read the New Testament, one that helps you to understand things better, one that makes sense, and that is to read through the New Testament chronologically. Right? What do I mean by that? I mean, we're going to read it as it happened in time. So, of course, we have the life of Christ. That's the first thing. It's recorded in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But after that, we have then the church. It's birthed on the day of Pentecost in Jerusalem. But all of the letters of the churches, for the most part, were written at some point in time between Acts chapter 1 and the end of the book of Acts. Now, some were written after Acts was completed. But we're going to read those epistles, those letters that were written within the time context, within the chronology of when they were written. And it makes so much sense. It's so much fun. Because, for example, we'll be reading about Paul establishing the church in Corinth, and then we'll stop in the book of Acts, and we'll read 1 Corinthians. And we'll say, oh, look, it makes perfect sense. There's some things we read in Acts that apply to this. And so it just flows so beautifully. So here's our plan. We're going to read the Gospel of Matthew. We're going to save Mark, Luke, and John to different points throughout our journey. When we get about a fourth of the way through the New Testament, we'll read Mark. Then we'll read some more of the epistles. When we get about halfway through the New Testament, then we'll read Luke and so on and so forth. But we'll read Matthew first, then we're going to start in the book of Acts. And that's, a long time away from now probably. But we're not going to read the whole way through Acts. We're going to read through a little bit of Acts chapter 11. Okay, and then we're going to read the very first epistle that was penned chronologically. Do you know which one it was? Most people don't. They might think it's Romans because they think, well, Romans is the first epistle. Well, Martin Luther is the guy who gave us that order of our New Testament. And basically what he was thinking was, let's put the longest epistles first and work our way to the shortest epistles. Of course, he did, put 1st and 2nd Corinthians together, and 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, and the 1st and 2nd Peter, and 1st and 2nd and 3rd John, that type of thing. But if you look at your New Testament, you'll see, basically, in the epistles, it starts with the longest, works towards the shortest, till you get to that 3rd John, and then, of course, you come to Revelation. All right, so we'll get through part of chapter 11, and then we'll jump into what is the very first epistle that was written. Guess which one it was? Maybe you know. If you don't know, I'm going to tell you. It's James, the very first one, okay? And you'll see how it makes perfect sense that it's the very first one. We'll go back to Acts after we read James, and we'll jump into the second book that was penned, the second epistle. It was what? It was Galatians. Then we go back again to the book of Acts, read a little bit further, and we'll read about Paul doing some stuff in Thessalonica. Guess what we're going to read next once we get through that chronologically? We're going to read 1 Thessalonians. Okay, so it's going to be really a neat journey, really going to enhance our understanding and appreciation of the New Testament. Okay, thanks so much for joining me. See you next time.